So welcome everybody. This is the Get Ready to Recycle and Compost at School webinar hosted by Northern California Recycling Association, California Resource Recovery Association, and California Gold Rush chapter of the Solid Waste Association of North America. We had a lot of interest in this webinar and we are recording it. So if we can share that out with others that could not attend because they're in school or serving lunch or not available. So Jill, why don't you go ahead and go to the next slide and we'll kind of go over the housekeeping. So go ahead and turn off your video if you don't want to be recorded, and please mute your audio and put the questions for the speakers in the chat. There'll be an opportunity for asking questions later on in the session, and we'll get to as many as we can. We are recording this video, and the presentation slides and additional resources will all be available at ncrarecycles.org, and I will put this link in the chat. Let's go to the next slide, Jill, and we'll just go quickly over the agenda, and then I'll turn it over to Jill. So we're going to have presentations first from a great lineup of speakers who we will introduce in a moment. Then we will have prepared questions from our school committee. We have most of our committee members here on the line, and they can introduce themselves when they are speaking. And then we'll do follow-up questions from the attendees. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jill Buck, who will introduce our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and welcome everybody. You are part of the fortunate 500 who actually got a seat in this. We had to cap our registration at 500. What a great problem to have, that this many people are interested in school recycling. We are thrilled to death today to have Rae Carranza on with us. CalRecycle plays an important role in what we're going to be talking about. So this is how we're going to lay the framework for this conversation. And so, Rae, when you are ready to unmute yourself and come on, we are ready to hear what you have to say for us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jill. And I love the fortunate 500. That's a great way to phrase it. And hello, thank you to everyone for tuning in to CalRecycle's overview of laws impacting schools and school districts. And thank you to the Northern California Recycling Association for having me. I'm Rae Carranza, as Jill said, environmental scientist within CalRecycle's Material Management and Local Assistance Division, and one of the team leads for our schools team. Next slide, please. Thank you. In 2006, California's Global Warming Solutions Act, also known as AB 32, became the first comprehensive program of regulatory and market mechanisms to achieve real, quantifiable, cost-effective reductions of greenhouse gases, GHGs. Many individuals monitor school waste, including school district administrators concerned about increases in solid waste disposal costs, recycling conscious teachers and students, and city or county recycling coordinators working with a school district. In most cases, school recycling is a state requirement. Today, we'll review what some of these requirements are. Next slide, please. In 2012, California's mandatory commercial recycling, AB 341, or MCR, required schools to recycle or otherwise divert solid waste from landfills, impacting schools that generate at least 4 cubic yards of municipal solid waste per week. 2016's mandatory organics recycling, AB 1826, or commonly known as MORE, requires organics diversion impacting schools that generate 2 cubic yards of solid waste per week. Note that this 2 cubic yards is trash, recycling, and organics total. In 2020, AB 827, built off of AB 341 and AB 1826, introduces collection container requirements, impacting schools in areas where recycling and/or organics is generated. Schools must provide an appropriate container adjacent to the solid waste, that is the trash container, to collect and divert recycling and organic waste. These containers must be placed adjacent to trash containers and be visible, easily accessible, and clearly marked. Note, internal containers must either conform to the color requirements or have labels that meet these requirements. Examples of this signage are available for all container systems, 3-stream, dual-stream, and single-stream, in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Russian, Korean, and Punjabi, through the CalRecycle PR Toolkit. The link to these and other resources are located in the final slide. Next slide, please. And the reason most of us are probably here, the big one, SB 1383, addressing short-lived climate pollutants, SLCPs, and targeting methane produced in landfills. In September 2016, Governor Brown set methane emission reduction targets for California in SB 1383. It's a statewide effort to reduce emissions of short-lived climate pollutants. And those targets must, 1, reduce organic waste disposal 50% by 2020 and 75% by 2025. And rescue food for people to eat by at least 20% of currently disposed surplus food by 2025. SB 1383 defines a local education agency, or LEA, as a school district, charter school, or county office of education that is not subject to the control of city or county regulations related to solid waste. LEAs must arrange for the collection and diversion of organic material generated, both food and green waste. This can be done by either subscribing to an organic waste collection service or self-hauling organic waste to the required facility type. For example, a LEA could subscribe to an organic waste collection service that source separates organic waste from other waste, or might subscribe to an organic waste recycling service that includes mixed waste processing. A LEA could also recycle some of its organic waste on site. Additionally, schools must arrange for edible food recovery. The law phases food donors in using 2 tiers. These mandated food donors can help their communities now by starting a food share area for students and staff and work with local food banks, food pantries, and other food recovery organizations and services. Jurisdictions are identifying these entities, and a model agreement can be found on the CalRecycle site. That link is provided in this slide. Next slide, please. One common question that we get is regarding collection in the classroom, such as, if schools have a snack time that occurs in the classroom, would that classroom need an organics bin? Well, the answer is, it depends on the collection service that the school has. For example, if organics is present in the classroom and the school has a 3-container collection service, then an organics container would be required to be placed alongside the trash and recycling containers in the classroom. Next slide, please. This and other frequently asked questions can be found using the resources listed. Please note these resources, along with the materials management and local assistance schools team inbox address. Also, I highly recommend subscribing to the school and local education agency listserv for additional information, resources, and program updates. For the FAQ pages, note that the local education agency questions are located under, quote, non-local entities. It's a lot of information in not a lot of bit of time, but I believe that leaves us with some time for questions. So with that, I open it up.
Perfect. I do not, and I'm going to need a minute here.
Okay, just let me know when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Rae. That was outstanding. And I know our team has got some prepared questions before we move to our next speaker. So when you all are ready, go right ahead.
Thanks, Rae, for all that. So with the, do you think that there will be further CalRecycle support towards like grant offerings for schools and school districts? Just because with the bin infrastructure, that's going to be a pretty heavy lift on school districts' budget. So I'm just wondering if there will be any grant cycles that will be coming through for schools.
There are organics program grants and community compost grants. I am not sure about container grants through CalRecycle. I would defer to Curie Canuella, who is our schools team lead on here, if she has any other information on that. So she can chime in on that, but it's definitely something that we can look into, Nancy.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And then is there any partnership between California Department of Education? So then we're kind of incorporating some of the social infrastructure curriculum. So it's kind of, right, it's kind of side-by-side type work that we've got to do. What's your perspective on that?
Right, so CalRecycle and especially the schools team are definitely partnering with CDE and also EEI to disseminate information and also utilize whatever structures that we have to support and aid in school districts and local education agencies. Actually, we utilize the CDE listserv to help get out this NCRA presentation out, and it was highly successful. So we definitely will be leaning on that partnership in the future, as it has shown to be beneficial.
Okay. And is there room, opportunities for us to partner with you guys, or how do we find out like what's in the works so that we can be leveraging those tools as soon as they're available?
Do you mean school district in general, like Oakland Unified, or CDE?
In general, just when we're looking for curriculum and relevant resources, what's our best way to stay in the loop?
Definitely subscribing to the listservs. That link that's in the current slide actually will take you to all of the CalRecycle listservs. So there's an SLCP one for 1383 updates. We recently added the school district and local education agency listserv. But that is how LAMD, local assistance, and our department in general will get out the most recent information and resources to you.
Great. Amanda, are you seeing any strong questions that we want to ask for sure for now until we have the end time for chatting?
I do see some questions. If a school has a share table that diverts all edible food, would that satisfy the food recovery component in SB 1383?
So I take that to mean that all of the food is actually recovered or taken by students and staff, in which case there would be no longer any edible food to be recovered. Is that a correct understanding?
No, I think if whatever's left at the uneaten food table, and if that's being donated to a local nonprofit, and if they calculate those could go towards the county's numbers on the total food recovery component.
Okay, correct. I was missing that last piece where what happens with the remaining food on that table. If that food is being recovered, then that should fulfill the requirement.
Okay, great. And I think there's just clarification needed on the 3-stream cans outside our buildings, or does it require to be inside the classroom? I think you answered that on kind of how much waste is generated, but you can speak to that.
Sure. It comes down to what type of waste is generated and where. So different parts of the campus are going to generate food in different areas. And if that waste is generated there, then there needs to be the opportunity for diversion.
And then finally, so we can move on, do you know how long rural counties are exempt from SB 1383?
If Curie could speak to that, I believe the initial exemption is 2 years, but I'll have to double check, and I can provide that information at a later time.
Yeah, we can look that one up.
Okay, I think we're on time to switch to the next person. Jill, can we pass it to you? And then Rae will definitely have more questions for you towards the end. Thank you.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rae. That was great. And just so everybody remembers, this is the first of our webinar series. The Northern California Recycling Association Schools Committee will have many, many more. So this is to get us started thinking about these requirements and get us started thinking about how we will comply and what we need. And so all the questions that we're seeing in the chat are things that we can address on the NCRA website, and we can put these answers together for you in some subsequent emails. So stay tuned. I am thrilled to death to introduce our next speaker. I have the privilege of working with him all of the time. He works in the school district in my hometown, Pleasanton, California, and he is the Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and he's been with the district for a couple of years. And I remember when he came on, it was such a delight to find that he was very well aware of many of the state laws that pertain to waste management. He's also very on board with the idea that not everything can be accomplished just through curriculum and the instruction side of the house, but that the operations side of the house needs to be involved as well. And he's done a great job leading the Pleasanton Unified School District's green team at the district level. And I'm excited to have him share his perspective. So Ahmad, I will be the driver for your slides. Just let me know when you're ready. Welcome.
Sure. And thank you, Jill, for that kind introduction. And good morning to all our participants. And thank you for having me on this webinar. I'll share with you my experiences from the business services kind of viewpoint. And I've been doing both as the CBO for the last 7 or 8 years, and before that in maintenance and operations and fiscal services and construction. So I kind of bring that kind of tool set with me and that experience. And prior to being here in Pleasanton, similar role in Menlo Park in San Mateo County. So I'll bring that perspective as well. Next slide, please. So I think that while we talked about the education, student, and teacher engagement is really critical and important, the success, I believe, of these programs and these efforts is really has to do with having the operations and business folks involved. And that's that really critical nexus as we are involved in understanding the laws and regulations and making sure they're adhered to. The fiscal team has to understand the laws and regulations and why purchases and particular needs are met. We are often the ones who are dealing with the contracts with our garbage haulers and our recycling and compost vendors. And so it becomes really critical that the business and operation folks are brought in early in this process to both understand the laws, to understand the cost involved, and to lay out the project plan. I mean, that's what we do, is to plan these out and how are they going to get implemented? Who are the critical players that need to be involved? Without that operational and logistical support, no matter how good our students and teachers do, unfortunately, the trash won't get into the right place. And I critically remember when we had set some of these policies up, and I got a phone call from a very irate teacher who said they're dumping the trash in the wrong bin, after all the effort that they had gone in. And so it becomes that critical to engage that process. And through that, we need people within the business and operations who are really champions and who are shepherding this along to ensure that the proper details are met, the proper bins are in place, the proper signage is in place. And so again, that component of thinking through the responsibility, the cost component, the labor consideration resides with the business folks and operations. Next slide, please. And so when these programs get started, there's a lot of excitement at the educational and component, and teachers and students are really engaged because, it's the front line and it's in the news and it's kind of like the future of our world. And I think kids and teachers are really understanding of that. But when it comes to the actual implementation of it, it's really critical to really have that look at what are we doing? What are our practices currently? And doing those visitations and saying, like, what are our trash bins even look like? Can we handle the 3 bins? And you'd be, and many of you who know, trash bins can be very expensive, right? And so you can get sticker shock, and the business folks are going to kind of like not want to invest in when there's so many needs out there. And so you have to think about that whole process and really what is the as is given status in both at the school levels and again you'll go to the middle schools and high schools, it'll be different and so on and so forth. And once you have that plan, you got to build that infrastructure. And quickly you'll see the cost will really escalate. And so you have to figure out, well, how can we do it cost effectively? How can we build capacity in our system? And that component really ties into the training for management to understand the laws and regulations that they are responsible for. At the end, if a school district or an LEA does not meet these requirements, they're not going to be coming after the our school sites. They'll be coming after the district because we are the responsible individuals at the district. And then our site administrators, what's their role? You know, what's their engagement? How are they going to set up their site green teams and committees? How are they going to get engagement in it? And then it goes down to our custodials. They're on the front line. They're the ones who are making sure the trash gets picked up. And between the day and the night, if you train just the day people, then the night people don't know it. And then the substitutes. And I've seen it firsthand that critical training component and making sure that they have the tools that they need. You know, do they have the right bins? Do they, you know, is their schedule and time going to be impacted if we put a compost in every classroom? Are we now going to introduce rodents into our classrooms? So there's a lot of detailing that needs to be thought through to really have a successful program. And it's not a one-time thing, it's continual. You know, our custodians are changing. You know, we bring in new people, and so people need to be trained continuously, and systems need to be maintained. And so for that reason, it's really critical to kind of start small, start with what I say the low-hanging fruits. You know, look at your food service program. You know, that's where a lot of waste is. That's where there's more control. Our CNS folks are really strong in that, so we can partner up with them. Look at our lunch and eating areas. It's easy to set up the 3-bin systems outside and to start in those locations. And then you can scale from elementary to middle school and to high school. And at the high school and middle school, you can really engage the students to become part of that and those extra hands and that support. And those are really popular clubs, as I firsthand know with my own daughter who does that at her high school. And then again, the commitment from the district, having the board policies, having those goals set, and that accountability is really critical so that the school sites are reporting back to the district office and the district office is reporting back to the board and the superintendent. That chain of accountability and reporting are critical. And obviously, as these regulations and laws come into effect, we'll have to report those to our state agencies and local agencies as well. So that builds that kind of feedback process in there. Next slide, Jill. And again, you know, again, we've been doing this for several years, and with the support of the Go Green initiative has really helped us with good foundational planning. And we, you know, we've created reports back to the board, and informational input from the community has also come back and improved our systems. And so just yesterday we had a meeting, and we want to bring students on board, our high school students, to be part of our team, and then to engage with their efforts as well. And so be happy to answer any questions, but you know, it's something that I'm passionate about, and you have to find that person in that business office that is passionate and can kind of keep that torch going.
Thank you so much, Ahmad. I'm so excited that we had you on today. And again, to our listeners and our participants, this is just the beginning. If you want more of this kind of information from someone in his position, we can deliver that. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for the questions from our team. Amanda?
I think there's a lot of general questions about liability in regards to food waste recovery and donation. So I don't know who wants to take that question.
Well, I mean, I'll take a quick stab at it, and others can chime in. Yes, I mean, you have to, I mean, in terms of food recovery, we were talking about it yesterday. There are pretty strict guidelines on how long a food can be maintained, the temperature settings and stuff. So you have to follow that, and have to have the manpower to, you know, provide the food to the homeless shelter or wherever you're going to do the food recovery. So those are logistics that have to be thought through. But as long as those guidelines are followed, and you can make arrangements and agreements with your with whomever you're providing the food with. I think that that's a great thing that we're actually looking into.
And I think if we look at the chat, Suzanne answers the Good Samaritan law protects, and perhaps someone else was going to chime in on that.
Yeah, so we have the federal Good Samaritan law, and then the state passed, we have our own that's reinforced on food donation, and also a school piece on food share and food donation as well. That might be a good webinar that we host in one of our next few rounds, because there's a lot of details behind it. There's a lot of allowances, there's a lot of misconceptions, there's a lot of myths going around. There's different allowances that are possible. I'll pull up the recent legislation that was passed for the state that addresses, and then of course there's changes because of food share, but it still can be uneaten food. But I think that would be a good webinar that we do in one of our next rounds.
I also saw another question about the role that students play in the green teams. Can you talk just a little bit more about that, Ahmad?
Sure. So at all our schools, that we've kind of created these teams, which includes typically a site administrator. It includes our custodial team, and then includes staff members, teachers, and such, and then the students. So if it's at all the schools, they can create lunch clubs, and who can talk about the issues. And at the middle school and high schools, they've helped create the bins and the signage and actually help set up. And I know at the elementary schools, I've seen these groups actually help with, trying to make sure that trash is put into the right locations. They could be the helpers for staff members to ensure, because at those lower grades, it's confusing. You got this cardboard goes over here, this, can goes over here. So, once they can, help support that, they're the extra hands and eyes on that. So, regular meetings, the clubs, they do different type of informationals. They can create web pages and push out information to students and families. So there's all of that host of things that those student groups can do once they start meeting and really collaborating with each other.
All right. I know that with any one of our speakers, we could spend the whole day with them asking questions, but we want to get to our next speaker. So I will go ahead and advance the slides and let him be introduced. Thank you.
Hello. I don't know if anybody, am I able?
You're there. We hear you.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Robinson, and I am one of the vice presidents for the Northern California Recycling Association. And I am excited to introduce Mr. Devin Jackson. He is a teacher that I actually get to work with personally, and I'm very proud of all of his success. And he is a 6th grade Earth, Life, Physical, Science, Engineering, STEM, and STEAM robotics teacher at Foothill Middle School, which is a part of Mount Diablo Unified School District in Walnut Creek. And he has just completed his 8th year of teaching. And he's the lead environmental sustainability coordinator and staff advisor for environmentally concerned kids, the EEP Club, which I absolutely love and adore, at Foothill Middle School. And he's a certified climate change educator with the National Geographic Explorers, and a NASA Globe educator, a NOAA Ocean Guardian certified educator, and environmental education vice president of a K-8 environmental education nonprofit called Outside the Box 925. He's received his Master's of Arts degree in education, which was focused on environmental education, place-based education, and outdoor learning in middle schools from St. Mary's College of California, Moraga, California in 2016. Please, everyone, let's welcome Devin.
Thank you so much, so very much, Ms. Robinson, for that wonderful introduction. I just want to make sure, can everybody hear me okay? Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to say to Ms. Robinson and everybody else, thank you so much. Science rocks, and so do you, and so does environmental sustainability, and so does AB 827 and SB 1383, the three-way streams. So today I will introduce you to the protocols and procedures associated with AB 827, the three waste streams that are required for schools and businesses, and the SB 1383, which is the food waste diversion and recovery procedures from a teacher point of view. Now, I will help provide with what is called the social instructure after the district, of course, acknowledges in your district the need to compost and recycle. Next slide, please. The Environmentally Concerned Kids Club, EEP Club, at Foothill Middle School guides and supports students and staff on how to lead an environmentally aware and sustainable life on campus. The EEP Club was actually founded over 22 years ago. I'm actually the second, third, and maybe even fourth advisor to the club. The club is instrumental in maintaining an ecology focus at Foothill. EEP meets virtually once a week on Thursdays for an hour before school. There are 7 students in the club, and actually we just had a meeting this morning from 8 to 9 a.m. In May 2018, the EEP Club and Foothill Middle School were awarded a bronze level Green Ribbon School Award from the California Department of Education and received a Waste Busters Award for 75% waste diversion with a future goal of zero waste by 2030 and beyond. I had an earlier goal, but well, it didn't work out. Foothill Middle School and Mount Diablo Unified School District are currently the first and only school and district in Contra Costa County, which is part of the wider San Francisco Bay Area in California, to receive a Green Ribbon School Award. During the 2019-2020 school year, the EEP Club was awarded a NOAA Ocean Guardian designated school for its work associated with educating students and staff about the 6 R's and implementing a waste diversion program at Foothill Middle School. Currently, EEP is working on an at-home composting project funded by NOAA Ocean Guardian program and food waste diversion composting project funded by the World Wildlife Foundation. Next slide, please. Now, I really like this slide. Why should we encourage our students, staff, parents, guardians, and community members to compost and recycle? Because it's harming our ocean. It's harming our watersheds. It's harming our livelihoods. One of my students in EEP, the president last year, she spoke about, you may just litter one piece of plastic on the ground, but if everyone litters one piece of plastic on the ground, that's a lot of plastic pollution. It's never too late, and it's never just one. When you throw plastic and garbage away, there is never a way. Now, I dare you to just throw one piece of plastic away. Come on, I dare you. Okay, next slide, please. The protocols and procedures associated with AB 827 and SB 1383 are identified and implemented at a school site and or district by developing an energy plan based on the 3 spheres of sustainability: environmental, social, and economic, which is the effective environmental and sustainability education, where I come in as a teacher. Foothill Middle School's energy plan was to reduce trash and increase the quantity of school-wide composting and recycling. Next slide, please. We're going for today bronze, tomorrow gold. Now, pillar 1. So you might be thinking, okay, is Mr. Jackson just going to go over all the pillars? Well, just the highlights. So pillar 1, environmental, school, and district-based protocols and procedures from a teacher's perspective. What Foothill is doing with from our Green Ribbon School Award is we're committed to reducing the use of energy. And we did a solar project that happened several years ago: trash reduction, energy savings, lighting, landscaping, lawn replacement. And you can see there on the screen the solar project overview. Foothill Middle School has a total of 786 solar panels covering 18,266 square feet. They produce 334 kilowatts of electricity. Now, Foothill's not the only school in the district to have this. All schools have this. All of Foothill's electricity needs are met by the solar array, and excess power generated by Foothill's solar array is sold to local gas and electric utility. The solar array energy power generation has achieved a reduction of 1,660 tons of greenhouse producing gas carbon dioxide from the atmosphere since its installation in 2012. And there's equivalent to removing 294 cars from the road and not driving a total of 3.4 million miles. There's also smog reduction, 911 pounds, reduction in sulfur dioxides, 157 pounds, and the equivalent of planting 344 acres of trees. Now, the district manages our energy use, resource use through the fiscal department, monitoring costs and looking for ways to reduce energy and water usage. That's why I have the deltas here, the district EPA Energy Star Portfolio Manager, reduction of non-transportation energy use, energy master plan. Now, I want to point out it was not that easy to work with the district to get this information to be able to support Foothill and the student population. But we tried and we did it. We have over 1,000 students, and as part of the school's plan and the reduction of materials sent to landfill and increase the amount of material that students and staff compost. Over the past several years, various strategies to promote composting and recycling have been experimented with to encourage students and staff to be environmentally conscious and also find the most effective locations for compost, recycling, and landfill. So you can see here the percentage of solid waste diverted to the landfill, and this was our cubic yards and our frequency. Next slide, please. Now, pillar 2 is focusing on the health and wellness of students and staff. And we really, when it comes to a green ribbon school, really it's important to have a healthy school and healthy staff. So Healthy School Act, pesticides and hazardous contaminants, healthy food and nutrition policies. We've been working with Dominic Maki, the director of Mount Diablo Unified School District Nutrition Services. We're trying to do a school garden at Foothill. You can see here the alternative transportation and the signs. This was a pre-COVID waste audit that we do. This was the EEP Club from last year. And so the EEP Club conducts periodic audits of the contents of landfill, compost, and recycling containers to monitor the quantity and accuracy of the material deposited in these containers by both students and staff. We actually do 4 waste audits a year, 1 a quarter. Well, COVID unfortunately made that really difficult. Now, I do want to show you that Foothill encourages to use alternative forms of transportation. This was pre-COVID to get to and from school. I will admit, virtual learning currently reduces the difficulty in getting to and from school. I'm so sorry. Ill-placed joke. I'm sorry. Believe me, health and well-being of all my students is very important. Next slide, please. Pillar number 3. And this is my favorite part as a teacher, the economic and effective environmental sustainability interdisciplinary learning. So my students are currently working toward reducing the amount of trash that goes to landfill. The ex-students are also involved in campus-wide student education, making sure students are composting and recycling correctly. The ex-students are involved in working alongside staff to make sure pre-COVID classrooms, multi-use rooms, restrooms, and lounge waste is being gathered correctly and eco-friendly supplies are being used. We are also doing a campus-wide recycling and composting program with pictorial identification stickers that represent acceptable and non-acceptable discarded items that can and cannot be discarded in the bins. We do the waste audits 4 times a year, 1 per quarter. We have eco-literacy morning announcements every morning, and adults and students hear that a certain discarded item can be recycled or composted instead of the putting in the landfill trash bin. For example, we actually had one that said, tip of the day, plastic utensils are trash. Did you know that plastic bottles can go in the recycling bin and plastic bags cannot? Thank you for doing your part from EEP. We are also promoting water conservation. 7 refrigerated refillable water bottle drinking stations at Foothill. We have lunch monitors when we were in the class or in the school to 2 or 3 students monitoring the recycling, compost, and landfill bins. The goal is to observe these students as they're disposing of their discards and educate them if they put the discards in the incorrect bin. Now, I promise that we're not going to say bad, bad, bad. We're going to say, may I help you with that, and encourage them to put them in the right bin. We also have some lunch monitors that are giving positive behavior rewards and when a habit becomes a routine. We also promote via school-wide welcome back assemblies, presented EEP Club to staff and faculty meetings, and we go on social media. We have environmental awareness posters in hallways, quad, and lounge room, and we use environmental materials. And we are working with Jessica Robinson and our other elementary schools. We're going to do a food waste audit. We're going to find out if we can reduce the amount of food waste. We are also going to be working with other Recycle Smart to really encourage students to reduce, reuse, recycle in the 6 R's. Next slide, please. And I promise now I will wrap up. The students and staff have come a very long way, but we still have a lot more to do in order to reach silver and gold. Currently, I am trying to do the best I can to implement at least 3 of the next steps, which is the edible schoolyard garden, the outdoor education, and the increased partnerships. Nevertheless, COVID-19 and 100% distance learning has put a big wrench in our well-oiled machine, which is the successful habits of our student and staff environmental stewards at Foothill Middle School. We could not have done it without the help of our community and the people that are on today. Last slide, please. In the words of John Muir, when we try to pick out everything by itself, we find that it is connected to other things. Science rocks, and so do all of you. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Devin. I do have a question for you. Could you please share with the audience, in case if there's any schools that are just getting started, and you're a middle school, so that's great. There is usually a little bit of a stigma with middle schoolers that people feel intimidated about getting the recycling and compost programs going because they feel that middle school is a little bit of a harder nut to crack. So I want to ask you, for the other schools that are present, are there any pre-COVID, what were some of the challenges that you experienced building up to your program that you currently have?
Well, thank you very much for that question, Jessica. That is a great question. The first challenge that I had was really to connect with my students, because I'm the 6th grade science teacher and I have 180 students that I see every day. And I was connecting with them to see who would want to be part of this environmentally concerned kids club and this green team. A lot of the students would say, oh, I don't want to be picking up garbage. I don't want to have to go through garbage on a big blue tarp. I don't want to have to tell people to recycle and compost, and I don't want to have to meet after school. And I'm like, okay, just curious, do you want a planet in the next few years? Do you want, is there a planet B? Do you feel it's necessary to help non-humans and plants and fungi? And so I kind of appeal to some kind of connection that they might have. Also, another challenge with the students was in 5th grade, they come from our awesome elementary schools where they really show the importance of composting, recycling, and avoiding the landfill. When they get to 6th grade, they're still kind of interested in it. But when they get to 7th and 8th grade, oh my goodness, it's like something switched off and they just change. To be honest, students who are really motivated in 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade, it's like, I don't care about that. And they'll walk up to the bins and they'll put the item in the wrong bin to my lunch monitors as a way to just be like, hey, you do it. And so there, you know, that middle school, let's just say that middle school emotional, social dynamic. And a third challenge is, I love my custodians. Mount Diablo Unified custodians, fantastic. They're great. I love my Foothill custodians. The custodians wanted to only empty the trash, not the compost, not the recycling. And one day, actually, I remember it fondly. I was in my room after school, and my bins were being emptied, and I saw the custodian was empty compost and recycling bin, and I said, "Thank you so much for emptying those bins." And I found out that the person had dumped them in the trash can. So, you know, that's a challenge. Work your district. Again, I love Mount Diablo School District, but finding out all the information for energy, like how much we pay for energy, how much we pay for water, how much we pay for like the pesticides. A lot of that information was so tough to find because the district said, here's our whole district bill. I'm like, well, how much does Foothill, you know, get charged? I don't know. So it was like really hard, and I'm just a teacher. I'm the teacher. I've got 180 students. So great question, Jessica. I'm sorry I went beyond that, and I can definitely answer more questions later time too.
This is great, and the reality is, like, this is real. Like what you experience, other teachers experience, right? We're all like figuring this out. It's not if we had this all laid out, we wouldn't be having this seminar right now. So this is, you know, this is
Yes.
good information, and it's also, you're also very inspiring because you have, and we are here, and we are breaking through these barriers, and we're figuring out that we're connecting the dots. And so this is a learning curve. And then before I pass this off to my team, I have one more question for you. Could you share any best practices that were really working for you prior to COVID?
Yes. The first best practice that I saw working with my students was finding a need in the community or finding a need in the school and using a mantra that I had on one of the slides, which was think globally, but act locally. And what I noticed with some of my EC members in previous years, they would say, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this, let's do this. And I'm like, that sounds great. And then one student one day said, Mr. Jackson, we have all these great ideas, but what are we going to do? And so I think that think globally is great, but what can you do to act locally? And so something that was best practice for the thinking locally is to find need at my school, have the students find a need, and if they're seeing that, you know, the bins at the end of lunch are not sorted correctly, the lunch monitors go out and do that. If they find that there's a lot of trash around their school, they would go out during the EC time, and we did a trash walk. And one of the slides had a picture of 30 minutes worth of trash, and they go around and do that. Also, another best practice is bringing in speakers, bringing in people from like Dr. Mike Biddle, who is a plastic specialist that was teaching them how to take old plastics, make them into the nurdles or to the pellets that is the liquid gold of the plastic industry, or the environmental use of plastics. And then also give the students a chance to talk to their classmates. Before COVID, we actually went into the classroom and they did a presentation. And then a fifth best practice, I know it's really important to talk about climate change, absolutely. But I really feel no doom and gloom before grade 7. That means no doom and gloom before 12 or 13 years old. You can definitely talk about it, But if we talk too much about, like, you know, the turtle with the straw up its nose, we're gonna scare them.
That's kind of
And we're gonna scare them to that they might not want to do something. They just might think I'm only one.
What else?
So.
All right. Well, thank you, Devin. I'm going to pass the baton now to Amanda and Nancy.
So, Jessica, real quickly, if you don't mind, could I just point out on the resources slide that's currently up, I did put the Foothill Middle School bronze level green ribbon school award journey. And I have this tiny URL. I've attached Foothill Middle School's, I think it's like a 30-page green ribbon school award application that got us the bronze, so that you all can take a look at that. I know other districts in the area have tried for several years to get green ribbon. It takes a lot of time. So I'm helped too, and there's all that information.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Devin. So one of the things that's come up in the chat, and especially with us having Curry and Rae on the line, would be, right, so with the counties not having authority over the school districts, and this will be a state, you know, regulated and mandated and compliance piece, what's the anticipation of what that might look like to a school district from the state level to ensure that school districts are in compliance? Do we still have Rae and Curry on the line?
Yes, sorry.
There we go.
I was muted. There we go. So my understanding of the question is about the enforcement piece or the assistant piece?
The enforcement piece. What teeth are in this legislation that might be, we can be leveraging with?
Right. And before I get into that, I do want to emphasize the importance of the assistance. We want to make sure that schools and school districts have the infrastructure and us in their corner in the best possible way to put them in a position to implement programs without having to use those teeth. But if the department finds that a local education agency has failed to meet the final deadline after an issuance of a notice of violation, the department can send a notice stating that the department has placed them on an organics waste recovery non-compliance inventory, which is listed on the CalRecycle website. The department may remove that respondent from the organic waste recovery non-compliance inventory upon a finding based on all the available evidence that they're no longer in violation. But essentially, there is going to be a list of all of the non-compliant entities. And in general, most schools and districts and even general jurisdictions and cities don't want to be known as being non-compliant, but not green, especially in a state like California, where we are progressing towards mitigating climate change as much as possible.
Right, right. So what will that look like for your team as far as finding out who's not in compliance?
As a part of AB 939 and CalRecycle's anytime review process, we conduct regular assessments of jurisdictions, and with SB 1383, local education agencies are addressed for the first. So we're still working on the different mechanisms that we will be utilizing in those assessments, and we'll have more information on that to come.
Great, thanks, Rae.
Nancy, I did want to cover the last couple of slides before we head into the rest of the questions for the group, and then we can stop sharing the slides. I wanted to point out that in the chat, we have a link to the NCRRA website, Northern California Recycling Association website, and also we're including a post-webinar survey form. So Jill, if you could go to that last slide. And essentially, we want to get your feedback on this webinar and get your suggestions for future webinars so that we can provide you with the resources that you need to help implement these new state laws. So stay tuned on that. I just wanted to point that out. I put that in the chat, and Jill, you can go ahead and stop sharing, and I'll turn it back to you, Nancy and Amanda, for final list of questions.
Great, great. And seeing we only have 4 minutes, but as Jill was saying, right, this is just the first step, and we're thinking of kind of keeping this conversation going, and this has been much in the want. Ahmad, I have a question for you that's come up a fair amount, is on custodial union contracts. What was the experience that you had there in Pleasanton with your unions?
So I think that the challenge is whenever you add additional duties, and so it becomes an additional pickup or other things, that becomes a concern. Do we have enough time to complete all our tasks? And so that's something that need to be looked at. The other thing is, the weight of the recycle the organics. You have to be careful on that, because especially in certain locations, those can get quite heavy. So those are certain things we've had to work through. But I think if you kind of include them in that process and are mindful of their input, and okay, we got to get new cards so that it can be quickly done. They don't have to run back for another card, or how are they going to move or and be able to pick up these things. How are you going to time them? And so if they're involved in that, you get less I think issues and becoming a union issue. I think that if you think through with them, their problem solving, it becomes a smoother process.
Great, thanks. Yeah, and I think the other, to add on to that, is the whole idea that this is now mandated. In the past, it was always an ask, and now it's mandated by the state. So then it's good to kind of frame it as, okay, how are we going to achieve this? It's not if, it's how, and the state's requiring this. So then what is that infrastructure going to look like? And then it doesn't have to necessarily be framed out as being new, just that it's being added on, it's being built on existing work. So, it doesn't necessarily need to be a fully vetted process with the union. And remembering to include, because we've had other districts here in our Alameda County where the teacher union got their feathers ruffled up about not being brought on board. So it's important to look at all the union issues. And seeing we've got about 2 minutes. Rae, another question for you is on if the school district county doesn't have organics pickup, what is that going to look like from the state level, and making sure that those services get in place and then the districts would be in compliance?
So that stems from AB 1826 regulations. We want the jurisdiction as a whole to have those services in place. And so currently LAM, Local Assistance and Market Development Branch, is working with jurisdictions at the city, regional agency, and JPA levels to make sure that they have the infrastructure, organics, composting, or biodegradation facilities in place. But since you mentioned, I guess we're going to SB 1383 now, the school is its own entity that is responsible for having that in place. And so what we discussed earlier was that there are a number of ways to still be in compliance: on-site composting, leveraging edible food recovery, and feed options. But if your jurisdiction in general is finding a hard time closing that gap, I highly suggest reaching out to your local assistant development person. And I can include that link to that specific representative or liaison, and we can help you troubleshoot and find any different opportunities that are available locally.
Yeah, that's a great reminder on the on-site composting and leveraging waste reduction and the food recovery. And we were talking online on the chat about on-site composting. I think that would be another great webinar that we could be having in the near future. That's something that, yeah, even with Devin, we're trying to even distance learning, right? Helping kids do on-site composting at their house, and then when they come onto the campus. And then during distance learning, right, so then the schools are having a smaller volume, and some of them it's just on call. So while we're in this distance learning, then we may not be fully held accountable because we're not at that volume of waste being collected. Would that be accurate? So it just depends upon the volume that the school's doing.
It does depend on the volume. There is a de minimis or a threshold waiver for the amount of organics that is being generated. So yes, that is true. But also there are different opportunities depending on the type of waste being generated, whether it be food waste or green waste, and that lends itself to different technologies for that diversion and composting or food recovery.
Got it. Got it. And one of the things that we're trying to do here in the Bay Area is just getting schools set up. And even when there's like small pods happening, like getting those programs set up. So then it's easier when all the student body comes on, everything's in place, signage, it's all set up because it'll be so much harder. So seeing that we're on time.
We'll probably need to wrap it up there, Nancy.
Yeah.
So we'll thank everybody, including the Niagara Schools Committee, the California Resource Recovery Association, K-12 Technical Council, all of our speakers, and really appreciate everybody attending today. We will go ahead and email out the resources and all of the links. And we do want to continue to engage with you all and provide more webinar resources for everybody as we move forward to help schools recycle and compost. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for today, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, everybody.